Sarah Mitchell was cleaning out her grandmother's attic when she found the box. Old, dusty, hidden behind decades of forgotten belongings. Inside were letters, dozens of them, yellowed with age, tied with a faded ribbon. Love letters from World War II. Sarah was 32 years old, a history teacher. She had always known her grandmother, Helen, had been married young. That her husband, Jack, had died in the war. But Helen never talked about it. Even on her deathbed, 3 months ago, she had remained silent about those years. Sarah sat on the attic floor, opened the first letter. The handwriting was careful, deliberate, the words of a young soldier far from home. My dearest Helen, I am writing to you from England. We ship out soon. I do not know where. They do not tell us. But I wanted you to know that I think of you every moment. Your face is what keeps me going. The memory of our wedding day. The promise we made. I will come home to you. I swear it. Wait for me. All my love, Jack. Sarah felt tears sting her eyes. She had never known her grandfather. He had died before her mother was even born. But here, in these letters, he was alive. Young. In love. Hopeful. She read another letter. Then another. Jack wrote about training. About his fellow soldiers. About the fear and the boredom and the homesickness. But every letter ended the same way. I love you. Wait for me. I will come home. Sarah reached the last letter in the bundle. Dated August 15, 1944. 2 weeks before Jack was killed in France. But as Sarah pulled it from the ribbon, she noticed something. This letter was different. The envelope was sealed, never opened. Sarah's breath caught. An unopened letter. From her grandfather. To her grandmother. Written 78 years ago. Why had Helen never opened it? Had she not received it? Had it arrived after Jack died and she could not bear to read it? Sarah turned the envelope over. On the back, in faded pencil, someone had written, "Return to sender. Addressee deceased." But that was wrong. Helen had not died. She had lived to be 96 years old. So why had the letter been returned? Sarah's hands trembled. Should she open it? It was not addressed to her. It was her grandmother's private correspondence. But Helen was gone, and Sarah was the only family left. She decided she would open it, if only to honor Jack's memory, to let his words finally be heard. Carefully, Sarah broke the seal. The paper inside was brittle. She unfolded it slowly, and began to read. My darling Helen, if you are reading this, it means I did not make it home. I am writing this before we go into battle. They say it will be dangerous. That not all of us will survive. I am not afraid to die. But I am terrified of leaving you. Of breaking my promise. Of never holding you again. There is something I need to tell you. Something I should have said before I left. I know we married quickly. 3 weeks after we met. Everyone said we were too young. Too rushed. That we barely knew each other. But Helen, from the moment I saw you at that dance, I knew. I knew you were my future. My home. My everything. If I do not come back, please know this. The short time we had together was the best of my life. You gave me hope. You gave me something to fight for. Something worth living for. Do not mourn me forever. Live. Be happy. Find love again. That is what I want for you. But know that wherever I am, I will love you. Always. Forever. Until we meet again. Your Jack. Sarah sat in the attic. The letter in her hands. Crying for a grandfather she never knew. And a grandmother who had carried this loss for 78 years. But something did not make sense. The letter had never been delivered. Helen had never read Jack's final words. She had died not knowing that he wanted her to be happy. That he had released her from mourning. Sarah looked at the envelope again. Returned to sender. Addressee deceased. Why would someone think Helen was dead? She pulled out her phone. Started researching. World War II. Mail delivery. Military records. And slowly, the pieces came together. In 1944, there had been a mistake. A clerical error. Another Helen Mitchell. Same name. Same town. She had died in a factory accident. And somehow, Jack's letter had been marked for her instead of Sarah's grandmother. The letter had been returned to the military, filed away, lost in the chaos of war, and Jack's final words to his wife had never been delivered. Until now, 78 years later, Sarah sat in the attic, the letter in her hands, and she made a decision. She would honor Jack's memory. She would make sure his words were finally heard, even if it was 7 decades too late. Sarah spent the next 2 weeks researching. She scanned the letters, uploaded them to ancestry websites, posted in military history forums. She was looking for anyone who might have known Jack Mitchell, anyone who could tell her more about the man her grandmother had loved and lost. Responses came slowly. A few historians, some amateur genealogists, but no one who had known Jack personally. Until one email changed everything. It was from a man named Robert Chen, 89 years old, living in California. He wrote, "I served with Jack Mitchell, Able Company, 2nd Battalion. We were at Normandy together. I knew him well. He saved my life." Sarah's hands shook as she typed a response. Within an hour, her phone rang. "Miss Mitchell? This is Robert Chen. I got your email. Is this really about Jack Mitchell?" "Yes," Sarah said. "He was my grandfather. He died in France in 1944. Robert's voice cracked. "Jack was the best man I ever knew. I think about him often. I am 99 years old now. Most of my war buddies are gone. But I remember Jack like it was yesterday. Can you tell me about him?" Sarah asked. Robert paused. Then he began. "I met Jack during training. He was 19 years old. Just married. He carried a picture of his wife everywhere. Helen. He would show it to everyone. Tell anyone who would listen about the girl he married 3 weeks after meeting her. Some guys made fun of him. But Jack did not care. He said, when you know, you know." "He sounds wonderful," Sarah said. "He was," Robert confirmed. "On D-Day, we landed at Omaha Beach. It was hell. Men dying everywhere. Chaos. I got hit. Shrapnel in my leg. I went down. Could not move. And Jack, he could have kept running. Could have taken cover. But he did not. He came back for me. Dragged me behind a tank. Kept me alive until the medics came. If not for Jack, I would have died on that beach." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. "I did not know. My grandmother never talked about the war. She probably could not," Robert said gently. "The pain was too great. What happened to Jack was senseless. We survived D-Day, made it through weeks of fighting. We thought the worst was over. Then, in August, we were ambushed. Jack was hit. I was right there. Held him as he died. His last words were, 'Tell Helen I love her. Tell her I tried to come home. I promised him I would. But I never found her. I tried after the war. But I could not locate her. The guilt has haunted me for 78 years. Sarah's voice broke. He wrote her a letter. His last letter. But it never got delivered. There was a mistake. It was returned. My grandmother never knew his final words." Robert was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "What did the letter say?" Sarah read it to him. Every word. When she finished, Robert was crying. "Helen deserved to know that," he said. "She deserved to know that Jack released her. That he wanted her to be happy." "I know," Sarah said. "That is why I am trying to find anyone who knew him. I want to honor his memory. Make sure people know what kind of man he was." "There is something else," Robert said. "Jack wrote letters every day. To Helen. But there was one letter he wrote that he never sent. He showed it to me. Said it was too honest. Too raw. That he would send it when the war was over and he could explain it in person." "What happened to that letter?" Sarah asked. "I do not know," Robert said. "After Jack died, his personal effects were sent back to the States. The letter should have been with them." Sarah felt a chill. Personal effects. She had not gone through all of her grandmother's things yet. Most of the boxes were still in storage. "I need to go," Sarah said. "Thank you, Robert. Thank you for telling me about Jack." "Wait," Robert said. "If you find that letter, will you tell me what it says?" "I always wondered. "I promise," Sarah said. After they hung up, Sarah immediately called the storage facility. She needed to see the rest of her grandmother's belongings. She needed to find that letter. 2 days later, Sarah stood in a storage unit. Boxes everywhere. She had been searching for hours. Old photo albums, clothes, furniture, but no letter. Then, in the very last box, at the bottom, she found it. A small metal box, locked, with a key taped to the top. Sarah's hands shook as she opened it. Inside were Jack's dog tags, a medal, a folded American flag, and an envelope, unsealed. The paper inside visible. Sarah pulled it out, unfolded it, and read the words Jack had written but never sent. "My Helen, I am not brave. I know everyone says soldiers are heroes. That we are fighting for freedom. For our country. For what is right. And maybe that is true. But I am here for one reason. You. I fight because if I do not, someone else will have to. And I cannot live with myself knowing I sent another man to die in my place. I am terrified every day. I see things I cannot unsee. Do things I cannot undo. War is not glorious. It is not heroic. It is brutal and cruel, and it breaks something in you that never fully heals. I do not know if I will survive. The odds are against us. Men die every day. Good men. Better men than me. But I keep going because of you. Because I made a promise. Because I want to come home. I want to hold you. I want to build a life. I want to grow old with you. And if I do not make it, I want you to know this. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. 3 weeks we had before I shipped out. 3 weeks of marriage, but it was enough. Enough to know what love is. Enough to know what I am fighting for. So if you get this letter, if I am gone, know that every moment with you is worth it. Every fear, every battle, every nightmare, worth it, because I loved you, because you loved me, and that is all that matters in the end. I love you, Helen. In this life and whatever comes after. You're Jack. Sarah sat in the storage unit, surrounded by the remnants of 2 lives. And she understood. Her grandmother had received this letter, had read it, had kept it close for 78 years, but had never told anyone, had carried the weight of Jack's love and loss alone. And now, Sarah held both letters, the one that was never delivered, and the one that was never meant to be sent. 2 final messages from a young soldier to his wife. Separated by time, united by love, Sarah knew what she had to do. She would share Jack's story, would make sure his words were heard, would honor the promise he made and the love he carried. Even 78 years later, even though everyone involved was gone, the story deserved to be told. Sarah contacted the local historical society, the VFW Post, the newspaper. She told them Jack's story, about the undelivered letter, about Robert Chen, about Helen's silent grief. The response was overwhelming. The town where Jack and Helen had lived wanted to honor him. They planned a memorial service, 78 years after his death, a ceremony to finally bring Jack home. The day of the memorial, Sarah stood in the town square. Hundreds of people had come. Veterans, historians, families of World War II soldiers. And Robert Chen, he had flown from California, at 99 years old, to honor his friend. Sarah and Robert stood together. 2 strangers connected by a man they both loved. A man neither had known well, but whose impact rippled across decades. The ceremony began. A military honor guard, a flag folding ceremony. The mayor spoke about duty, about sacrifice, about love that transcends time. Then it was Sarah's turn. She walked to the podium, the 2 letters in her hands, and she began to read. First, the letter that had never been delivered. Jack's final words to Helen, telling her to live, to be happy, to find love again. The crowd was silent, many crying. Then, Sarah read the second letter. The one Helen had received. The one Jack had written but never meant to send. His raw, honest, terrified words about war and love and hope. When Sarah finished, there was not a dry eye in the square. Robert Chen stood, saluted, and spoke. "Jack Mitchell saved my life," Robert said, his voice strong despite his age. "But he did more than that. He showed me what it means to love. What it means to fight for something greater than yourself. I have carried his memory for 78 years. And I will carry it until my last breath. Rest in peace, my friend. Your mission is complete. Your words have been delivered." After the ceremony, Sarah approached Robert. "Thank you," she said, "for remembering him, for honoring him." Robert took her hands. "Jack would be proud of you," he said. "He would be proud that his story is being told, that his love for Helen is being remembered." "But there is more," Sarah said. "I found something else. In my grandmother's things." She pulled out a small box, opened it. Inside was a wedding ring, and a note in Helen's handwriting. "For Jack, when we meet again." Robert's eyes filled with tears. "She never stopped loving him." "No," Sarah confirmed. "She never did. She never remarried, never dated. For 78 years, she was faithful to the boy she married in 3 weeks. The boy she loved in uniform. The boy who never came home. That is the greatest love story I have ever heard," Robert said. "And now everyone will know it," Sarah replied. In the weeks after the memorial, Jack's story spread. Local news picked it up. Then national news. The story of the undelivered letter. The love that lasted beyond death. The grandson who kept a promise. Sarah received thousands of messages. From veterans. From war widows. From people who had lost loved ones and never got closure. Jack's story gave them hope. Gave them permission to grieve. Gave them a reminder that love never dies. But the most meaningful message came from a woman named Elizabeth. She was 94 years old. And she had been Helen's best friend. "I knew your grandmother," Elizabeth wrote. "We grew up together. I was her maid of honor at her wedding. I was there when Jack shipped out. I watched her grieve for 78 years. And I want you to know something. Helen was happy, not in a loud way, but in a quiet way. She taught school. She loved her students. She volunteered. She lived a full life. But every night, before bed, she would look at Jack's picture, touch his wedding ring, and say goodnight. She never stopped loving him. But she also never stopped living. That is what Jack wanted. And that is what she did." Sarah read the message with tears in her eyes. Her grandmother had honored Jack's request. Had lived. Had found happiness in small ways. Had not been consumed by grief. Had carried his love without being crushed by it. That was the real story. Not just of loss, but of survival. Of honoring someone by living well. By carrying love forward rather than being buried by it. 6 months after the memorial, Sarah received a call from a publisher. They wanted to turn Jack and Helen's story into a book. Sarah agreed, but only if all proceeds went to veterans' causes. She spent a year writing, interviewing Robert, talking to historians, reading every letter Jack had sent, understanding the context of the war, the fear, the hope, the sacrifice. The book was published on November 11th, Veterans Day. It was called The Last Letter, a love story from World War II. The response was extraordinary. The book hit bestseller lists. Not because it was sensational, but because it was real. Because Jack's words were authentic. Because Helen's love was genuine. Because in a world of quick divorces and fleeting relationships, their story reminded people what love could be. Sarah did book tours, talked to veterans groups, to schools, to historical societies, and everywhere she went, people had similar stories. Undelivered letters, lost loves, sacrifices made, lives changed by war. One woman in Kansas told Sarah about her grandfather who had died in Vietnam. His letters had been lost. She had never known his voice, his thoughts, his love. Jack's story had inspired her to dig deeper, to contact his unit, to find survivors. And she had found a man who served with her grandfather, who remembered him, who told her stories, who gave her the connection she had always craved. Jack's story was opening doors, creating connections, healing wounds that had festered for decades. But the most profound impact came from Robert Chen. At 99 years old, he started a project. He contacted every surviving member of his unit. All 5 of them left. And together, they created a memorial website for all the men from Able Company, 2nd Battalion who had died. They posted pictures, letters, stories, made sure every fallen soldier was remembered. Jack's page was the most visited. His letters, his story, his love for Helen, it became a symbol, a reminder that the men who fought were not just soldiers. They were sons, husbands, fathers. They had dreams, hopes, loves, lives that were cut short. Robert called Sarah on the anniversary of Jack's death. "I did it," he said. "I kept my promise. I told Helen's family about Jack, about his last words. It took 78 years. But I did it." "You did more than that," Sarah said. "You made sure Jack's legacy lives on. That his love is remembered. That he did not die in vain." "None of them died in vain," Robert said firmly. "Every man who fell gave something precious. Time, youth, life. We remember them. We honor them. We tell their stories. That is how we keep them alive." 2 months later, Robert Chen passed away. Peacefully. At home. Surrounded by family. He was 99 years old. A veteran of World War II. A hero. A friend. And a keeper of promises. At his funeral, his family asked Sarah to speak. She stood before a crowd of hundreds. Veterans. Family. Friends. And she told them about Robert. About his friendship with Jack. About the 78 years he carried that memory. About the promise he kept. "Robert Chen saved my grandfather's memory," Sarah said. "He made sure Jack was not forgotten. And in doing so, he saved something in all of us. The belief that love matters. That sacrifice has meaning. That we owe it to those who came before to remember. To honor. To tell their stories." As Sarah left the funeral, an elderly woman approached her. "I am Robert's daughter," the woman said. "I wanted to give you something." She handed Sarah a small box. Inside was a medal. The Bronze Star. Robert's. Awarded for valor on D-Day. "He wanted you to have it," the daughter said. "He told me before he died. Said you were keeping Jack's memory alive. And that meant more to him than any medal." Sarah held the medal. Felt the weight of it. The history. The sacrifice. "I will treasure this," she promised. The daughter smiled. "My father was a quiet man. Never talked much about the war. But in his last days, he talked constantly about Jack. About Helen. About love. He said your grandfather taught him something important. That the greatest act of courage is not fighting. It is loving. Loving so deeply that you risk everything. That you face death knowing you leave behind someone who will mourn you. That is true bravery." Sarah returned home. Placed Robert's medal next to Jack's dog tags. Next to Helen's wedding ring. 3 lives. Connected across decades. By war. By love. By memory. And she understood. The last letter was not the end of the story. It was the beginning. The beginning of a legacy. A reminder. A promise that love never dies. That sacrifice is never forgotten. That the words we leave behind matter. 10 years have passed since Sarah found the letters in her grandmother's attic. The last letter has sold over 2 million copies. Been translated into 30 languages. Inspired a documentary. A museum exhibit. Countless veterans to share their stories. Sarah is 42 now. She left teaching. Started a non-profit called the Last Letter Project. Its mission? To find undelivered letters from wars throughout history. To reunite families with words from loved ones lost. To make sure no message goes unheard. So far, they have found over 3,000 letters. From World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, each one a small piece of history. A connection restored. A closure granted. One letter was from a soldier in Vietnam to his infant daughter. Telling her to be brave. To study hard. To make him proud. The daughter, now 56 years old, wept as Sarah read it to her. "I never knew him," the daughter said. "But now I do. Now I know he loved me. Another letter was from a nurse in World War I, to her sweetheart back home, describing the horror of the trenches, the young men dying in her arms, but also the beauty she found in small moments. A sunset, a soldier's smile, a letter from home. The sweetheart had died in the flu pandemic. Never read her words, but his great-grandson did. And he understood. He understood what his ancestor had sacrificed, what the cost of war truly was. Sarah's organization grew. Volunteers, historians, genealogists, all working together, finding letters in archives, in attics, in forgotten boxes in museum basements, reuniting families with voices from the past. But Jack's letter remained special. It was the first, the one that started everything. And every year, on August 15th, Sarah returned to the town square, to the memorial erected for Jack Mitchell. And she read his letters. Both of them, the one that was never delivered, and the one that was never meant to be sent. People came from all over, to hear Jack's words, to remember, to honor, to connect with a history that felt distant but was made real through his letters. On the 10th anniversary, Sarah stood at the memorial. An elderly woman approached her. She looked to be in her 80s. She held Sarah's book, and she had tears in her eyes. "My name is Alice," the woman said. "I am Jack's sister. I did not know any of this. I was 3 years old when he died. I do not remember him. Our mother never talked about him. It was too painful. She destroyed all his letters, all his photos, tried to erase the pain by erasing the memory. I grew up not knowing my brother. But your book, your work, you gave him back to me." Sarah hugged the woman, let her cry. Then Alice said something that changed everything. "There is one more letter," Alice said. "Jack wrote it to me, the night before he shipped out. Our mother hid it. I found it when she died. I have kept it for 40 years, not knowing what to do with it. But now I know." She handed Sarah an envelope, yellow with age, sealed. "Read it," Alice said. "At the memorial, let everyone hear my brother's voice one more time." That evening, as the sun set, Sarah stood at the memorial. The crowd hushed, and she read Jack's final letter, written to his baby sister. A letter that had waited 80 years to be heard. "Dear Alice, you are 3 years old. You will not remember me. But I want you to know something. I am your big brother. And I love you. I am going away, to war. I might not come back. But if I do not, I want you to know this. Be brave, be kind, be strong, live a life that makes you happy. Do not let fear stop you. Do not let others tell you what you cannot do. You are special, you are loved, and even if I am not there to see it, I will be proud of you. Your brother always, Jack." The crowd was silent. Then Alice stepped forward, stood beside Sarah, and spoke. "My brother died 80 years ago," Alice said. "But today, I heard his voice for the first time. Today, he finally came home. And I want to thank Sarah for finding him, for keeping his memory alive, for reminding us that love never dies, that words matter, that the bonds we forge are stronger than time, stronger than death, stronger than war." The sun set behind the memorial. The crowd dispersed slowly, but Sarah remained, standing before Jack's name, carved in stone, remembered, honored, loved. She thought about Helen, about carrying love for 78 years, about the quiet strength it took to live after loss, to honor a promise, to be faithful to a memory, to find happiness without forgetting grief. She thought about Jack, about his courage, not just in battle, but in loving, in writing, in being vulnerable, in leaving behind words that would outlive him, that would comfort, connect, heal. And she thought about herself, about finding those letters 10 years ago, about the journey that followed, the lives touched, the stories told, the connections made. Jack's last letter had been delivered, not to Helen, she was gone, but to the world, and the world had listened, had been changed, had remembered. That night, Sarah sat in her office. The walls covered with letters. Thousands of them, each one a life, a love, a story waiting to be told. Her phone rang. Another family. Another lost letter. Another chance to deliver words across time. Sarah smiled, answered the phone, and said the words that had become her mission. Hello. The Last Letter Project. Let me help you find your voice from the past. Because in the end, that was what mattered. Not the medals. Not the battles. Not even the wars themselves. But the words. The love. The connections. The letters that traveled across decades. Across generations. Across the gulf between life and death. Jack Mitchell had written his last letter in 1944. It was delivered 80 years later. And its impact would echo forever. Because love never dies. Words never fade. And the letters we leave behind are the truest measure of our lives. The last letter is never really the last. It is just the beginning.